Welcome to Repros Fight Back, a podcast on all things repro. I'm your host, Jenny Wetter, and each episode I will be taking you to the front lines of the escalating fight over our sexual and reproductive health and rights at home and abroad. Each episode, I will be speaking with leaders who are fighting to protect our reproductive health and rights, to ensure that no one's reproductive health depends on where they live. It's time for Repros to fight back. Welcome to this week's episode of Repros Fight Back. Before we get started with the interview, I have a couple of quick housekeeping things. One, if you love this podcast and want to make sure that others can hear it, the best way to help share it is, one, to share it on Facebook and Twitter and tell all your friends about it. But two, if you can go and subscribe and rate and review us on iTunes. It really helps other people find the podcast on iTunes. So thank you already. Two, we have some fun Repros Fight Back swag. And as a way to say thank you to all of our great listeners, we wanted to have a contest. So we're going to have a couple contests over the summer and some over the fall to say thank you to all of our wonderful listeners. So the first one is going to be, we want to make sure that we're producing content that you're interested in and that you love. So tell us your favorite topic that we have covered so far, or a topic that you would love to see us cover. So reach out to us at Repros Fight Back on Facebook or Twitter and tell us, what have we covered that you love and what would you love to see us cover in the future? And we will pick, 20 people from that first batch of people who tell us what they love or would love to see us cover, and you'll get a fun package of Repros Fight Back swag. Okay, thank you. So moving on. This week, we are going to have an interview about child marriage. So a couple weeks ago, I was in Kuala Lumpur for the Girls Not Brides global conference. It was a great opportunity to meet a lot of advocates around the world who are working to end child marriage. And I decided to take advantage of the fact that I was there for that conference to conduct interviews with people from around the world who are fighting child marriage. So today we're going to have the second in that series. We already had the first one, which was our last episode, to talk about something that just doesn't get as much attention. I know I wasn't as familiar with it. Often when we think of child marriage, we think of Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Sub-Saharan Africa. But this week we're going to talk about child marriage or unions, it's not always marriage, in Latin America and the Caribbean. So I'm really excited to have talked to Perla Vasquez with the Central American and Mexican Youth Fund to talk about what child marriage or unions in Latin America and the Caribbean looks like. I hope you enjoy the interview.
Yeah, hi, I am Perla Vasquez. I am from Mexico. And in Latin America, the child marriage have different colors and textures. It's not like the same forms or conditions. For example, in Latin America, we try to talk in more about the teenagers and not only with child, because we have a difference between the translation to girls to in Spanish niñas. So in Latin America is a big problem for teenagers, not necessarily for girls. In difference with other countries, for example, only the 2 or 1% in some countries is the problem with childs, with girls. But the majority, the 18%, is a problem to teenagers or adolescents, especially the youth woman or the young woman.
Okay, so what ages then are you seeing teenage marriage?
We have this difference between 18 to 28, 18 or 17.
Okay.
And for girls, we're talking more to 12 or less years old. So the other things in Latin America, we're talking about the unions, not only the marriage, because we don't have necessarily the institutional conditions to have in your village. You only have some religious leader not necessarily some civil governmental offices. So it's easier to only have in union with some people you like or your family to push to or force to have a union with other people, but not necessarily is the legal marriage. So this is other specific characteristic to Latin America.
Yeah, so that's definitely different than what you generally hear talked about, right? You often, when you hear child marriage, you're hearing the younger, forced, legal. So not hearing the conversation around teenagers and unions.
Yeah, and also the other very complex discussion in Latin America is the difference between forced and choices, and because it's not only this typical imagine about the old man with very child girl. So it's more we're talking about more. The majority of problems is between the teenagers with teenagers. You know,
Okay.
you have the difference between 2-3 years old between the partners, and also these have different conditions to choose some union or not. No, the difference in Latin America, we try to find evidence or data about the difference to family support or not to have some marriage or union. If we try to look around of what happened with the problematic in the communities in Latin America, and we discover if the youth girl have more support for their families, it's possible she decide to don't be in some union. But if she didn't have this support, the most probably is she decide to go to have union or marriage. So this is other analysis we try to find in Latin America.
So it seems like it's more choice and less pressure in Latin America. Is that fair?
It's
mixed?
It's a mix.
Okay.
You know, it's not the typical discourse in other regions is all is first, all is push, and it never is your decision. And we discuss in Latin America, some of them is a choice.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to talk with a wonderful topic I like to share with other people to listen now. This podcast is about love. So in some reflections, the people tell me, but if the love is not true, it's not a condition for get married if you are a teenager, for example. And we discuss, I think we discuss, or we give more time to the rational ideas. That no, you have to decide with a better conditions, or you have to go into the education or whatever. But I think the big issue is about how we construct the love, the ideas about the love, how we can change the romantic love or the idealistic love you have. If you are a girl or youth, you have to feel in love with other old men. So this is the better reference or the best reference for your love, no? And we don't talking about the diversity of the loves, the sexual diversity of love. Some in other reflections, the child marriage was punished or forced because you have a different sexual preference. So it's like a corrective way to the families for some girls.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very important about how we construct the love.
A lot of times when you hear child marriage talked about, you talk about the things that are girls are missing out on, so missing education. But it seems like if you're talking about teenage unions, maybe that's a little less of a problem in Latin America, or is that not true?
Yeah, I think we have two realities. Our ideal reality in our minds is related to we like to stop to the people don't be married before to the 18 years. But the reality, we have a lot of people are married in unions in the 18s, and we have to create the conditions if they decide or not stay in this marriage condition. The government have to give them educations, self-care to the child, access to divorce. We have a specific problem with divorce. If you have violence in your family or in your union, but we don't have some procedures for access to the nuncio, to the man, you have to be older to 18. So what's a very complexity. Or if you like to access to self-care to the children, you have to be older. So the policy is not thinking in the teenagers, moms or teenagers, girls married. Yeah.
We're seeing this a little bit in the U.S. context where there's a push in the States around child marriage, and the same thing where you can have judicial bypass and whatever to get married under 18, but you might not have the legal recourse until you're over 18 to be able to file for divorce.
Yeah. And also I think it's very complexity for the majority of problem is not the prevent, is the attention. We have a specific problem with attention for the youth people in the policy process, in the social care, education, employment. So, and these girls and teenagers are invisible for the policies. So we only, and this is the other point I think is important to push in all parts of the world. We need to give services to the teenagers and girls to have now marriage or union.
Absolutely. We need to make sure that the married girls have access. Well, everyone should have access to the SRHR services, but particularly married girls as well need access to these services.
Yeah, and also I like to talk other typical myth in Latin America about only the poverty issue in the communities, and related to the we have a data to talking about the US for the Silicon Valley. You know, the Silicon Valley, we have our cell phones for the big technology, but also Silicon Valley have a specific study about the rich families to force to have married with relations with companies. You know, these Jewish rich families to use the child marriage, with the forced marriage in teenagers to have contracts between families and companies.
Okay.
So it's not necessary a poverty issue. It's a very structural, social, and cultural issue to use the marriage to generate interchange, economic interchange, you know. Not only this typical imagine to Latin America, the poverty, indigenous, marginalized, and not necessary is that we have in different levels of the society this problem.
So this is a podcast that talks about sexual reproductive health and rights. And so some people might not really understand why I'm doing a series on child marriage. Yeah. Now, I know you're also an expert in sexual reproductive health and rights and child marriage. So I thought you'd be the perfect person to talk about why it's important to talk about the two together.
At the beginning, I like to talk about the pleasure. The pleasure.
And that gets left out so often.
Yeah. I think we often lost the pleasure, you know? And when we can't find the clitoris also, but I like to talk about the pleasure because the marriage in this cultural way is the mechanism to the woman have sex and have pleasure. Only if you are married, you have the right to do that. So I think it's important to separate that in the cultural way with comprehensive sexual education, because at the beginning, we are human beings to our sexual. We have sexuality in all of the stage of our lives, and also, if you separate, you are not only to reproduce your lives, no. And this is very important to the marriage, because if we thinking the sexual and reproductive rights from teenagers and youth people, we understand it's not only the marriage, the way to have rights or sexual reproductive rights. So we have to separate that. And also, I think the most important about the women bodies or the women teenagers' bodies was the other people like to have the control for their bodies. So for this reason, other people push to have a child marriage, or to push to have this linking to have your love promise. So I don't know, is love promise the right word? Because it's like you give some for your boyfriend to demonstrate your love.
Okay.
And it's your first sexual activity.
Okay.
In Spanish is your promise, your love promise. But I think in English could be different, this word.
So like your first time?
And you give your promise.
Okay, so
love.
like your virginity.
Exactly. You give your virginity like the promise for love. And I think it's important if we have changed, cultural changes, where the youth woman can decide whatever partner they like to have, in not necessary pass to marriage. So this is very important to recognize the sexual and reproductive rights from young people, give more options and understanding to don't have to be a marriage, no? Mm-hmm. So it's very linking to prevent the child marriage, understanding the youth sexuality.
So do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah.
Your work.
Yeah, I'm working Central America and Mexico Youth Fund. It's a fund to support the youth-led initiatives and youth-led organizations in Central America and Mexico. And also we start to work in Caribbean, because I think the Central America and Caribbean is have the more complications, conditions, political conditions, safe conditions in the region. We believe the youth people have very strong strategies to change their lives, to change the lives to other people in their communities. So we support that. So please follow us in the Facebook and the Instagram to Central America and Mexico Youth Fund. We try to support the youth movement in Latin America.
Great. Well, we'll definitely make sure to include all that information in our show notes, that people can have easy access to all the Facebook and Twitter and all that stuff.
Yeah, please know more about how the youth people change their lives and change their community.
Absolutely. Well, Perla, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated talking to you. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks for the invitation. I'm so sorry because sometimes my English is not good at all, but I try.
I think you did great.
So thank you.
Thank you. For more information, including show notes from this episode and previous episodes, please visit our website at reprosfightback.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at reprosfightback. If you like our show, please help others find it by sharing it with your friends and subscribing, rating, and reviewing us on iTunes. Thanks for listening.